Caleb Carter, who was the first MAC football quarterback that meant something to you?
I guess the first one is Tyler Tettleton, but only because it was like I was interested in MAC football before I got to college, but only in the sense it was like a high-scoring, weird conglomeration of nonsense on weeknights. So Ohio football was the first time I actually took it seriously once I was in college. But I have like memories in my head of like Bruce Gradkowski and let's see, like Jordan Lynch doing crazy stuff and Dan Lefevre doing all kinds of stuff. It's all quarterbacks.
Well, I mean, I asked you about quarterbacks.
That's true.
Tettleton's a good one, though. He beat Penn State.
Yeah, that did happen. It happened once. We Ohio people got that on our belts.
This is the first of its kind Mid-American Conference football show where the two of us continue to sell our sports fandom souls to the league that's known for playing its games on Wednesday nights. And it doesn't matter if there's 14,000 people in the stands or if there's just 104,000 people in the stands. No, just 104.
Yeah,
probably. If there's 104 people in the stands because guess what? Our hearts are there. Our hearts are there. Even if the bodies aren't there, our hearts are in there.
It's and also... Yeah, it's weaseled its way into my soul. Like, I feel a little dark bear, like, pit of despair right there. Right where my heart used to be.
Yeah. And sometimes I'm at work, I'm like, guys, boss, I got to get Toledo NIU. I got to get that day off work. It's my religious holiday. And my boss man's like, Alex, get to work. It's not a religious holiday. And I say, sir or ma'am, you don't understand.
Are you sure that a Bowling Green Media Guide release date isn't also a religious holiday?
I was so hyped when I saw that.
Nothing gets me hyped like lower tier Mac East media guides coming available.
So I guess since we're here talking about Mac football forever, we need to properly tell everybody what the hell this is before they go click onto something else and exit out of this channel forever.
Seems reasonable.
So, Caleb, let's give people the 5 W's. Who are we? Who are you?
Well, I'm Caleb Carter. I am a resident of Evanston, Illinois, from Ohio originally. I'm an Ohio University graduate in the class of 2016. I covered football while I was in school, wrote a little bit for Hustle Belt. Alex and I both have that in common, where we met. And we've been doing some type of Mac-related tomfoolery shenanigan stuff for a long time. I was also previously the Northern Illinois beat writer for the DeKalb Daily Chronicle from October 2018 through this past summer. So got a lot of Mac footy sports stuff going on there. Alex has a factory background, you could say.
Yeah, I actually went to EMU. That's how I got ever interested in Mac football to the capacity that I am. I started with the student newspaper there, and then I started writing at Hustle Belt, and then I met Caleb, and then I didn't write at Hustle Belt, and then I started writing about the Mac.
You said you stopped writing after you met me, and like that's not. I didn't do that. I didn't deprive you all of Alex of Mac footy
timeline.
No, there's a connection there. He made it, guys. You heard it. Put it in the comments. It's Caleb's fault. It's my fault.
Those two things happened.
They happened together in joint work, which has nothing to do with why we're together now.
Wrote at Hustle Belt with Caleb. And then I didn't. And then wrote about the Mac independently. Podcasted about the Mac independently.
Did that a little bit with you too.
Meanwhile, had a journalism job. I don't do any of those anymore. And just like Caleb, those things aren't related. And now, me and Caleb are doing this together, and those two things are related.
We have taken the Mac pill. We are Mac pilled. Some of you are red pilled, some of you are blue pilled, we're Mac pilled.
Yeah, I mean, like, if we didn't want to talk about the Mac, we wouldn't. We don't have to. We are under no obligation, but we want to. So we're still here.
But we would like to remind you that UMass was competing in Mac and football a couple years ago.
We were alive for that.
That's right. Byron Leftwich and Randy Moss were part of the Mac, Alex.
Yeah.
There's so much happening in
Prater.
the Mac. Matt Prater. Good God, man. But, I mean, what do we even want to, I don't know. There's such a weird audience for Mac sports and such a weird and passionate audience for this that can be small but mighty. What should people be paying attention to us for? Why are we experts on the Mac and the weird stuff going on?
I mean, our hearts have like been in this, you know, like I think to some degree college football works like where like the best way to learn about college football and the best way to talk about it is through community journalism. And for whatever reason, like the Mac is like so quaint and so quiet and so like deprived of, media attention.
It's becoming a news desert of sorts. It's treated as a joke. I know we are here treating it as a joke, but it is also something we have a lot of passion about. We have a lot of knowledge about. It's something that we would love to build a community around.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where you guys come in.
That in mind, 3 quick goals, and then we have to move on to our main topic before we move into our MAC East preview. So our 3 quick goals. 1, we gotta get a Discord or a message board going, some sort of online community going. We want to like actually put it into action. Let us know what you think. Number 2, we want to try this video thing out. This is kind of new for me and Caleb, but it's a lot of practicing of what we already know too. So we hope you like what you see, like what you hear. If you don't, if you do, let us know. And number 3, whenever you're interacting with us, we want you to learn something new about the MAC. I feel like there's like something new to learn about this league every day, and we learn something new every day too, and we hope you have the same experience with us too.
Absolutely.
Also, if you look at the runtime for this video, not every video is going to be as long as this one. This is just like, extended intro. We're trying to pack in the MAC East preview. 2020
We're throwing
crazy,
a lot
man.
at you. We're throwing a lot.
We were
at
not
you guys.
expecting. We were not expecting a season to come up as quick as it is.
Yeah, so that's the thing that's happening. We anticipated all of these things happening, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, kinda. Did we? I mean, I didn't totally think it was all gonna happen until it did, right?
So we have a turnaround window of what, 4.5, 5 weeks or so between the vote for the MAC to become the first team or the first conference that decided to postpone the season to the spring. That's not a thing anymore. And instead, we see a conference that is pretty much no longer going to make money due to the loss of bye games. Is facing potential. A lot of departments are facing potential shortfalls. Other sports are seeing the pains of that, and they're kind of just backed into it because they don't want to be the conference that's not doing it. So, how do you feel about that, Alex?
I mean, there are a lot of moving factors. So, if I argue like one side too hard, it's not that one side beats all here. There wasn't one reason why presidents, 1 month say they unanimously vote against having a season, and then turn around the next month and unanimously vote to have a season eventually. Actually,
sure. And part of that, as we've talked about before, was the ability of testing to be conducted, right?
Yeah, that's a huge part of it. That was like a big reason why, they were against it. They didn't have the rapid, cheap testing. They had stuff that like you had to like wait a few days, and then like that was like a discrepancy between leagues and teams and people and this, that, and the other. And then the cost of it all too, especially for the big time programs, let alone the MAC, like it's just exponentially harder for G5 leagues alike to deal with that. And plus, like you said, with the loss of bye games, sorry if I sound quiet right now. I promise I'll be louder later on in the episode. My girlfriend's sleeping. She makes more money than me, so I need to let her sleep. But with the loss of bye games, like you said, and the ad revenue, like it's just everybody's hurting from so many angles. And, that's what the players were saying when they were all, rising up on social media saying,
Right.
In the statement, it was all about health. Well, we got some health things figured out, and people are subscribing to, test our way through this thing, even though games are canceling left and right. With the rapid results, you can kind of test your way into a 6-game season or whatever.
Right.
If more and more leagues are starting to play, why can't the MAC? And the MAC just said, well, you're right.
Yep, let's go for it.
Populism wins.
It does. And, not without apprehension. I have my own thoughts about, concerns about it and concerns about college football even being played right now. And it's not coming from a point of a lot of the framing of football coming back has been around the media doesn't want sports to happen or just unnecessary panic. Like the science says that this isn't affecting young people like this, but as plenty of people have this discussion already, I'm not introducing anything new. But it's not only football players who are affected by being involved in the sport.
Frank Solich is 76, man.
That he is. So I'm not rooting for the sport to be away. I am stoked at the possibility of watching weeknight football again and waking up in the morning and being like,
game day.
Yo, we get Toledo Ball State today. Let's go. I don't know how to feel about either of these teams. Like, the thought of that just gets me excited. And that shows you where our nerddom is and related to MAC football being back. So, for all of that, you're going to get us, blabbering on about what's happening in between the lines. We're going to cross our fingers that the coronavirus does not surge and that we do not have to fret about that week in, week out, and that everybody's going to get to play their games. But for now, we do know that, like, for example, Buffalo had some recent positive tests. Ohio, on the other hand, has been doing really well at several weeks in a row with rapid testing and no positive results. NIU shut down recently. And without it turning into a 5-minute, like a 10-minute discussion just about this in particular, just know that we're excited to talk about MAC football again. It just comes with a little bit of apprehension.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And, like, again, I hate... It sounds almost annoying just to, like, keep, like, saying it over and over. Like,
sure.
We love football, trust us, but we just are so scared for them, blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah, sorry that we sound like narcs about it, but kind of have to be during a global health pandemic that hasn't been figured out yet.
Yeah.
That's not our problem.
It's like, we know. Like,
well, it is our problem.
It is our problem. It's like, I'm going to continue to be concerned about it, and I'm also going to continue just to, I'm not going to shame anybody for being excited that football's back. How they go about it's one thing, and being safe and trying to take as many precautions as possible is one thing. But I'm so excited that MAC football is back.
Knowing what we know, again, not rooting against the season. The season's kind of stacked up to where like there's six weeks in a row, no bye weeks. MAC championship game on Friday the 18th of December in Ford Field. What's the likelihood of, what do you think is the likelihood of any game being canceled, knowing that when these games are being played, right before Thanksgiving and then like right after it? And then number two, if a game gets canceled, like what do you expect the MAC to do with this? Because, I saw Rachel Lindsay, she had talked to Lance Leipold about it, and the MAC hasn't issued to any of the teams as of Thursday morning. The MAC hasn't told teams like what the protocols are if Buffalo can't play against Kent State.
I mean, there's no wiggle room is one of the first problems. There's no built-in wiggle room without an extended season with bye weeks in between. There's a decent chance we're going to have teams just have games canceled, and it's going to be out of the control of some teams. It's a reality a lot of universities and high school programs and youth programs have faced over the course of the last few months. But with all those things in mind, I mean, the players wanted to move forward with it. I mean, we have to imagine with what we're reading that they're trying to undertake smart, common sense type thinking with this. It's not Dan Mullen at Florida saying, let's put 90,000 people in the swamp 2 days before having an outbreak on the team. So, I mean, the reality is what it is. It's, you're going to have your games, and if it gets canceled, well, that's what next season's for. One more year to think about how you want to play this team again. So, if we get a MAC championship game, and it's a legit one, cool. Good by me.
At what point would you call it like an illegitimate champion? Like they're already playing like a 6-game schedule, and would it be like anything less than 5 games played before the championship game?
I think if anybody has more than 2 games removed from their schedule and they make it to the MAC championship game, I think that's like a situation where I'd be like, and I know that's a really arbitrary number, but if you're getting like half of your games canceled, if you've got 6-game schedule, somebody's not playing 3 of them, and you go to the MAC championship game at 3-0, can they allow that? Like, I don't see where it comes from without playing at least like 5 of the games, for example.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a good chance we'll face a reality like that that's not predicted. So whatever that potential plan is, if there is one, would be nice to find out. And unfortunately, as Alex and I are privy to, there are not as many good Mac reporters doing the work anymore due to cutbacks a lot of papers. I left the Daily Chronicle kind of due to the precariousness of like the industry right now, and between Rachel Lindsay at the Buffalo News being an enterprise reporter who does high school and college, Alan Moff is with the Repository, covers Kent.
The Record Courier. Courier.
Record Courier. I'm sorry for their Alan. And then Nick Piotrowicz from the Toledo Blade.
But yeah, and there's plenty of others that we're not listing here. And if you're watching this and you feel left off, please don't take it personally. It's just because we're just listing off a few people off the top of our heads.
We still appreciate you, George Thomas, Akron Beacon Journal. But if you don't cover all Akron's game this year, we understand.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, not your fault. I'm sure you really want to be at the Akron football games.
Right.
Anyways, thank you again for the early support. We are going to move forward to the previously recorded MAC East previews. I'm also going to slide in an interview with someone who we just mentioned. Caleb, my friend, let's just get right into these East previews by starting about the Falcons of Bowling Green. Everybody's favorite team, right? Everybody's favorite MAC team is Bowling Green, with the orange, with the brown, with the Falcons, with the wind tunnel at Dwight Perry.
Alex, do we know anything about Bowling Green?
I know one thing about Scott Loeffler, and it's that Scott's first name has one T.
That did trip me up.
I also know that he likes running play action and offenses with plays where the quarterback has his butt his hand right under the center's butt. He likes that kind of offense.
So what you're telling me is he used to coach in the NFL. Got it.
Did you know that he once coached Tom Brady?
What?
And now Tom Brady is throwing tutties to Scotty Miller.
So basically what you're telling me is the MAC comes full circle, baby.
It always does.
Yeah.
Tell me anything you know about Bowling Green football. Tell me anything.
Oh, Lord. Matt McDonald is going to potentially bring some type of solidity to the QB position for the first time since Matt Johnson. Is that fair? I mean, Jarrett Doge was there for... Daggy. Several of BG's quarterbacks are now transfers or quarterbacks at other schools, so there you go.
And on the phone with me, I have Nick from the Toledo Blade. I'm not going to go on record and butcher your last name. I will only do that in private, but I will say thank you for joining us, Nick, for being our first guest. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you again for taking the time to do this with me. And I'm calling you because I have questions about Bowling Green football because I don't know enough about Bowling Green football, and maybe that's a good thing. You are on the beat. You've been on the beat for a couple of years now. You do a very good job there. Tell me, through your eyes, what is up with Bowling Green football? And I'm mostly asking about the offense because I don't know anything about this new quarterback they got.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty much a complete teardown of what had happened previously. This is going to be the second season for Scott Loeffler. And in my 10 years covering college football, this is probably the most open and honest agreement that I've seen with the school and the coach, where they essentially went and sold the job in late fall of 2018 as we need someone that is going to come in here and build this over the course of years. Mm-hmm. And Loeffler told them, listen, I don't care what the buyout is. All I want is time, because he thought it was going to take 4 or 5 years. And it turns out that both of them were right. So they're in year 2 of it now, but what they are trying to do is a multi-year project. And they've been very candid about the length of time this is going to take to become the type of team they want again. So it's still really early in that process, even though it's going to be his 2-year anniversary since getting hired at some point during this football season, it's still really early in terms of what they're trying to do.
Mm-hmm. And that I feel like that's a little hard to like get people to buy into, especially when you've been to the MAC championship, 3 times in this past decade. How hard has it been from your eyes that for Bowling Green fans to realize that it's not going to be, an overnight thing. It's not going to be just a 1-2 year deal. It's going to take as long as Loeffler wants. And for people to be okay with that.
I think for the most part they get it. They had seen how bad it got and how quickly under Mike James. And it wasn't all Mike James' fault. He was the wrong guy at the wrong time, hired by an athletic director who, frankly, made just an awful hire process. It was a horrible search that landed on then someone had never even been to Ohio, let alone recruited the area that he needs to win in the MAC. So I think most of the fans, by the end of the 18 season, knew that this was pretty bad and it was going to take a minute. Now, I will say that Loeffler gave himself quite a bit of leeway by winning the Toledo game last year.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't expected to do anything. I think most Bowling Green fans would have just taken keeping that game against Toledo respectable, and the fact that they actually won the game, I think it kind of sent a shock to the senses for everybody. Like, whoa, maybe this was the right guy at the right time. Still too early to make that determination, but I know that it's certainly for what's coming next.
Bowling Green's got this quarterback, Matt McDonald, that, came from Boston College. He, followed Scott Loeffler, was kind of his guy. From what I recall, he won the battle last year, right? But he wasn't able to play because he was a new transfer. Tell me about him.
He's something of a mystery. So he was going to be the starting quarterback as a junior at Mater Dei in California, which, if you are unfamiliar with recruiting, is one of the best high school football programs in the country. He broke his backup was a kid named J.T. Daniels, who became a 5-star recruit, went to USC, and is now at Georgia. So he got Wally pipped, essentially, in his most important year, transferred to Mission Viejo High School. Nobody was really on him. Boston College found him, spent a couple of years there, didn't think he was ever going to get his chance to be the starter, and essentially followed Loeffler to Bowling Green. So he has turned 22 years old. He just turned 22 and has essentially played 1 out of the past 7 years. So there's a lot people don't know about him. The people close to him think that this is a potential Power 5 type quarterback who just ended up being here under this coach in these circumstances. His high school position coach was Rob Johnson, who played in the NFL for a little bit, went to USC. And when I asked him if he thought he was a Power 5 type talent, he didn't hesitate to say, oh yeah, absolutely. He's got a little bit of skill around him, but the biggest question for them is, what is the offensive line going to be? And I think even at this point, they probably themselves don't have that answer.
Mm-hmm. What is he good at? Is he a runner? Is he a deep ball thrower? Is he just a precision passer? What is he good at?
I think you would probably call him pro style appropriately. Loeffler's offense has been criticized in the past for being so complex. So there's a lot of verbiage in their offense. There's a lot of stuff going on at all times. But he's mobile enough to hurt you with his legs, to do a little bit of the read option type stuff. But his biggest asset by far is his accuracy. And he won the job last year pretty clearly out of the guys that they had for what they were trying to do. He was pretty clearly the best fit. But to be fair, he was the only one recruited to play this system. So he looked pretty good last spring, but has waited another 15 months. And everything I've seen from practice, taking that for what it's worth, has been pretty impressive.
Aside from the offense, the defense was kind of, just not all there too. Overall, are there any bright spots on this defense? I know Carl Brooks is the guy that returns that, he made some plays in the backfield last year. But, who else are some guys that the defense is going to have to lean into if they want to win, if they want to break 500 this year?
Yeah, aside from Carl, I think probably their best defensive player might be Jordan Anderson, who's going to be a true sophomore safety, who played as a freshman last year more out of necessity than anything. And look like a potential all-MAC type kid somewhere down the line. He's really good. They'll have Colby Coleman back at linebacker, who has played quite a bit of snaps there. Other than that, just about everything else is up for grabs. Almost everything on Bowling Green's defense is a position battle. They're looking for depth pretty much everywhere, but especially on the line. Who plays at cornerback, with the exception of Caleb Biggers, is probably up in the air through the end of camp. And that's just the one thing they've got to get right. They've allowed 38 points per game 4 years in a row. And my math analysis is that it's hard to win football games when you're allowing 4 points as you score.
Mm-hmm. Last question, and we'll get you out of here. Of course, the shortened season. Their one crossover game is with Toledo. They opened the season with them, and then they got the whole MAC East ahead of them. The MAC East is not looking easy for Bowling Green at this point. Buffalo, Kent State, Miami are all, considerably above them in terms of, where they're at program-wise. But how do you kind of see things shaking up for Bowling Green? And I guess the better question would be, how many winnable games are on this schedule?
Yeah, it's a weird year because it's kind of a house money year where nobody's burning eligibility. Nothing is really expected of them. So anything that they get, I think, is probably gravy in a season that you didn't know was going to be played. And I guess at this point you can't even be positive that it will be played. So in terms of winnable games, probably the only one that you look at and say, Bowling Green should win this game is Akron. Can they steal another one or two from a couple teams? Possibly. But aside from the Toledo game and the Akron game, both of which they won, they played a lot of MAC football games that weren't particularly fun. So what their roster was compared to everyone else in the MAC last year was still a ways away.
Right on. All right, Nick, again, thank you so much for your time. Where can people find you if they want to find more Bowling Green coverage from you?
Yeah, all my Bowling Green coverage will come from my Twitter account, which is Nick P. Blade, and I will be covering the season for better, worse, or Scott Leffler likes to say, right or indifferent, from now until the end.
All right, Nick, thank you so much for your time. Have a great day.
Bowling Green, obviously, things have just not gone their way. They kind of lost their identity with, ever since the Dino Baby years, just like you said, with Matt Johnson as the quarterback. They had their identity. They were Falcon fast. That mentality is over at Kent State now, but that's for later.
Yeah.
Bowling Green under Mike Jinks, they kind of lost their way. And they hired Scott Loeffler to, if Bowling Green's not going to win a crap ton of games, Bowling Green's going to at least look like a program that knows what it's doing, because it didn't for the longest time.
Right.
And that's what this program needs more than anything.
And that's what they were hoping for when they hired Loeffler in the first place, right? Was a chance to hire somebody who could just put things
reorganize these file cabinets.
But, it's not like they don't have any talent coming back. Quentin Morris was one of the better tight ends in the league last year.
Sure.
He's a guy that I'm sure we'll come back to. Carl Brooks at defensive tackle is another guy. They don't have guys that just scream ridiculously talented, but you do get the sense from a more cohesive offense, hopefully this year, if you're a BG fan, that somebody's going to get some more eye-popping stats, and whether that's a wide receiver we don't know of yet or one of the running backs who hasn't made their mark yet, who knows?
Right, or maybe one of the freshmen who just got there. And it helps going into the season that, if they didn't have many bright spots last year, they at least beat Toledo. And guess what they get to open up with this year? Toledo. So if they get to open up with, that same sort of hype, and if they can just come into it and have its first winning streak in the rivalry series since forever ago, that'd be awesome. That'd be, that would give this season so much more heightened importance for them, right? If they just came into it and opened with a dub against Toledo.
Seriously, and imagine where their heads would be at as a program to go from thinking, okay, are we turning the ship around, to, oh gosh, we're not having a season, we don't even get to get things going in the right direction, to potentially beating somebody like Toledo, having a winning streak in the series, and carrying those good vibes into hopefully the rest of the season. I'm sure that's the hope right now, is just to be able to compete at a high level immediately. They've had the extra time to work in McDonald at quarterback. They've had the extra time to get some of those young guys they've brought into the program that came with the new coaching staff. So that's a position a lot of programs in the MAC are finding themselves in right now with a more recent coaching hire and a lot of young players that they're trying to make their mark. You've got coaches who are trying to have their guys in the program.
Mm-hmm. And hopefully that's, hopefully they don't like excuse themselves into, being in the bottom just for that. It's like, oh, our expectations aren't for winning. It's just for reorganizing. No one in Bowling Green is saying that. We're saying that for Bowling Green.
Right.
Number two, they're absolutely going to play passionate because we saw last year how passionate they played. They didn't play great, but they played better. And that's kind of the whole point of this all.
Right.
Looking at their schedule, their 6-game schedule, at Toledo, home against Kent, home against Buffalo, at Ohio, at Akron, and then they close the season home against the defending MAC champions of Miami. KALEB, how many wins do you see in there? Because I see 2 or 3. 2 or 3.
I mean, I'm thinking
they can do it. They can do 3, and I'm not saying they will win 2. I'm not saying they will win 3. I'm not saying they will win 1. I'm saying I see 3.
I think 2 is fair for now. Is where I'm at.
Mm-hmm.
Projecting them an actual 2, I wouldn't even put them at a 2.5. It'd probably be like a 1.5. So let's go with 2.
What's your 2? Because obviously Akron's got to be 1, right?
Yeah, that is one of them.
And what would you say the second is? Because I'm going to give them Toledo. I'm just going to give it to them.
I think a team that's surging like them is good for a victory against like a program that is maybe on okay footing. So, I mean, whether they're able to beat somebody like in Ohio, which I don't know if Ohio will be down necessarily, or I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of just thinking like they can beat a middle of the pack team. Not a team that's bad, but I would just expect them to win one other game, and I'm not really sure which one they would scoop it up in either. The
other team I was gonna throw out there that Bowling Green could beat is Kent State because one, it's early on. We're gonna talk about Kent State right after this, but I think one of the problems that Kent State has is that it doesn't return a lot of its defensive pieces.
Sure.
And that might be something where if Bowling Green's offense, at least if some of the pieces change, especially at quarterback. But the offense knows where it's going with the ball. Kent State might be where it goes through.
Sure. So about Kent State.
KALEB, tell me anything about Kent State football right now. There's a lot of ways that you can go with this. Tell me something about Kent State that you like or dislike.
Well, I mean, the first thing you've got to like is the two faces of a college football program in many instances is the head coach and the quarterback. And for one, Sean Lewis is already, who's the youngest coach in the FBS? If he's not the youngest, he's the second youngest. It's either him or Tom Arth, I want to say. Good Lord. But that's not completely not untraditional for the MAC, if that's a word, because there is often young coaches who go on to bigger.
I want to say Arth is older. Maybe Drinkwitz is closer to being the younger one there.
Yeah.
Anyways.
But for a program that was kind of all over the place in terms of sitting at the bottom for a couple of years, Kent State really elevated last year. And I guess the question this year is, with a pro-caliber quarterback in Dustin Crum, who's got a really strong arm, was the MVP of the bowl game against Utah State last year in a shootout. A lot of people got to see him on display in a bowl game that, kind of is like one of those games you would forget about, like, oh, Kent State, Utah State in a bowl game, real exciting. That's where you're wrong. You turn into those games because those are the barn burners. Those are the good ones. So when you have a face of the program in your quarterback and your head coach that are we're both on the rise right now, and expectations are high. There's a reason that Kent State is probably thinking about a potential championship for the first time since they were a ranked team in 2012.
Yeah, wouldn't you?
I mean,
that's the whole point. Yeah, and like you said, they played their ass off in that bowl game. Before that, they erased I want to say it was like a 27-point deficit against Buffalo last year.
Yeah, that was nuts.
They erased that, came back and won, and I don't remember if that was home or on the road. I don't want to say and be wrong. They're at Buffalo this year, so it was at home last year.
Yeah.
And then they also had a walk-off against Kennesaw State. Kennesaw State's FCS, but Kennesaw State, good program in a good state. It's a good football team that you walked off against. So, yeah, And Kent State, they always battle. They just don't. They don't play like they feel like they're at Kent State of the old, right? They just look like they're just so excited to be out there, and that's just, when you see all these guys playing with a different mindset than what they did, or than what the previous rosters had done. It's crazy like how a program can just elevate just with a little bit of positivity.
Yeah, and I mean
that might be a theme on this show, right?
Sure, they've got things going for them, and comes to mind obviously is an offense with a lot more weapons and the ability to move it around with quickness. And even like you look at the Toledo game from last year was 35-33. You might not think like shootout, but really entertaining back and forth type game, and to be able to play like that against Toledo in the middle of the season for a program like Kent State was really big last year, even in a loss. And a couple of these close games, the whole reason you've got like Matthew Trickett as like the MAC Special Teams Player of the Year last year at kicker was because he hit game winners. He hit the game winner against Kennesaw State. He hit big field goals in other games. I would definitely make a spirited case that Sam Sloman of Miami should have been the MAC Special Teams Player of the Year. He was almost the MVP of Miami last year.
Right.
But like when you've got somebody like Trickett can help them pull out some of those close games, and they've got more talent on this roster than they've had in years past. I mean, there's no reason to think they.
Yeah, and Trickett's been automatic ever since he just walked. Ever since he came to the program. And fired things off right away his freshman year, last year, and between the 2 years he's only missed one extra point, and he's tried 73 of them. For his career, he's 43 of 51 on field goals. Pretty damn good. He doesn't have the biggest boot in the world. I think his career long is like a 47, but that's still pretty damn good. But what Sam Sloman, he's in the same position that he saw Sam Sloman in, where Sam Sloman was like, all right, I'm kicking some of these easy ones. I got to get the long ones in there because that's what the scouts are after. I could be first team All MAC all my life. That doesn't matter. But I need to get paid at some point. And so he's got to drain some 50-yarders this year. And he's got, half the season to show that he can do that?
I mean, if he's doing it in the cold and the wind and crap weather and weird games, like all the more credit to him. But I'm sure.
Yeah, and if he, exactly like we just said, if he can do it in this weather, he can do it.
I mean, at this point, you're looking at a team that is probably hoping that they're not in a lot of games that's going down to the kicker. But if you're also at that level as Kent State where you're elevating toward the top of the conference, maybe you are in one-possession games where you need big plays like that from special teams. And Kent State's had a decent fair share of really high-caliber special teams players. I mean, it's really – I think of Dree Archer immediately. Who doesn't think of Dree Archer? But
oh, yeah. I mean, that's the Kent State football player. Him, Julian Edelman, and James Harrison. And Nick Saban.
I mean, at this point...
Speaking of a COVID year.
Yeah, seriously. Hey, if you haven't heard, Saban's got COVID. Whatever. Anyway, that's going to be old news by the time anybody hears this. What won't be old news is Kent State's offense. There you go. Boom.
Kent State's offense, how many teams will it blow away this year? Home against Eastern, at Bowling Green. Home. I'm looking at the schedule. It says versus TDR, that school down the road. Home against Akron, at Buffalo, at Miami, home against Ohio. Tough 3-game slate to finish off with for sure, especially with 2 of them on the road. But they get a nice present of Ohio at home, so anything is possible. It looks like a season's going to come down to the wire, but 4 or 5 wins, that could probably do it.
Yeah.
I think they can...
I think they're more likely to win 4 than they are 5, but I absolutely would not put it out of question that they could win 5 games. That said, you and I have already had our own discussions about why Buffalo and Miami are probably the 2 best teams in the East. So it's really hard to put them at 5-1 if we think Miami and Buffalo are better.
Let's just go right into Miami then, right?
Sure.
They were led by a defense. You thought I was going to say quarterback. They were led by a defense. Which was their quarterback. They had 11 quarterbacks out there. They played defensive line, defensive end, safety.
I mean, any given year, you've got multiple pro-caliber players in the MAC on defense. That's you're going to be a good team that year. I mean, we're so used to these shootouts and that being the identity of the conference, but if you're a Central Michigan and you've got like several guys who could make it at the next level, if you're a Miami who's got, I mean, you look back a couple of years to like Harding, who ended up going pro for a short amount of time. There's so much. I mean, Doug Costin's gone, yes, so they've got something to figure out at that spot, but they're still super talented. I mean, for you, talk about the guys who were back after opting out.
Well, the three guys that opted to sit the year out, and not just sit out just to return for next year, but sit out to go to the NFL right away because they were up on their senior years. They had a couple linemen, Danny Godlewski, I want to say that's how you say his last name. Tommy Doyle, easier name to say. Manny Ragumba, cornerback, who was a transfer from Iowa.
Yeah, and Ragumba was the MVP of the MAC championship game last year, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think now Ragumba, he didn't have like the. I'm going off the top right here. I think he only had like one pick and like 8 or 9 passes defended, which, you know, when you look at cornerbacks, you hope for more of the turnover stuff. You hope for more of the on-ball stats. I think Antonio Phillips of Ball State kind of beats him out in those stats from last year.
But if they're not throwing...
That said, I still think Ragumba was the best cornerback, especially coming back.
I mean, if they're not throwing the ball his way, it's for a reason, right?
Exactly.
And watching NIU, I was at the game when NIU played in Oxford, and NIU was in a decent place, but that defense just made plays. They shut NIU down when they needed to, and not having a pro caliber guy like Costin hurts, but between Ragumba being back and really having some really talented secondary players like Sterling Weatherford, some pretty athletic defensive linemen too. Still, they're
when this defense is pressed with like serious tasks, like they're pressed with serious offenses that they need to stop, they're there for the occasion. Like they're so there for it. They don't disappoint, and that's a constant. Like you say, Doug Costin's gone. They don't replace that Doug Costin mentality. They might have to, try like hell to replace his talent because he's really good. He's doing well in the NFL right now for himself. But that mentality doesn't go away at all.
Right, and I mean, between returning guys, so you've got Weatherford, who had almost 100 tackles last year. Ragumba, who was one of the best defensive backs in the MAC. You've got, Ivan Pace, right, coming back at linebacker. Am I thinking of the right person, right, coming back there? Yeah, I mean, the talent's still there. They've got guys who can step into new spots, and in an ideal world, your offense is only better after like going through some I don't even think growing pains is the right way. You've got a MAC freshman of the year quarterback who didn't light the world on fire, but they didn't ask him to.
Right, yeah, and that's kind of all they needed for him. Like he won the MAC Freshman of the Year award, but he didn't do it in the most convincing of ways. I want to say that. Let's see. Oh, I have the stats up right now. I can just scroll right up at it. His yards per attempt, 7.6. Not the worst, not the best.
Sure.
Especially in these times. Completed 55% of his throws. That's above 50. That's not very good, though. You want to be in the 60s. You want to be like 10% better at least. Played the full season, 11 touchdowns. That's not even one per. So it's not like he lit the world on fire, like you said. But that experience is going to carry over. He's a Gabbert. Like, you've heard that name before. So hopefully things work out for him. Hopefully the offensive line, especially with the two coming back,
right,
that'll, definitely give him an extra second or two between plays, to make some decisions.
Yeah.
And if the offense doesn't change too much from last year, 1, that might be bad for game planning. 2, that might be easier for him. So who knows?
And I think correct me if I'm wrong, I think you were of the opinion that there are a couple guys on that offense that you expect to kind of make some strides for Miami this year. Tyree Shelton, am I thinking right? That's probably a guy that could step up a little bit more this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he could do more. Jalen Bester, he was a good running back last year. I don't expect him to drop off too much because I liked his explosiveness. You lose Mo Thomas. He wasn't a big explosive back, but you think back to the MAC championship game, his 91 or 96 yard return to open up the game was actually the game changer, which is weird.
Last year was weird. Let's just mark up all of last year was weird. So why would we stop now?
We have to stop now because we have to go on to the other schools, but until we do that. let's look at the champs' schedule right now.
Sure.
Home against Ball State, Redbird rivalry. I don't want to recognize that rivalry after I say that, actually. I don't ever want to do that. I only did it I said it just so I could see how it feels. I'm never going to do it
Feels
again.
wrong, yeah.
Fake rivalry against Ball State to open the season. At Buffalo, home against Ohio, at Akron, home against Kent, at Bowling Green. Tough second and third games, but if you can start 3-0,
yeah, I like that schedule a lot for them. If you're Miami and you've already got the confidence coming back from a MAC championship season, playing Buffalo at home or away, having a chance to prove that early in the season that you're the team to beat again in the East, which last year I don't think we ever knew who the team to beat was until the last week of the season. And at that point, any team from the West could have been in. And I would still argue that Buffalo and Ohio were good enough in the East to play in the MAC championship game. Cards just didn't fall their way. So, you have the chance as Miami to prove that you're maybe the team to beat in the MAC East again, which everybody expects that. You come out and beat Buffalo and make a statement. Who's to say they're not easily 5-1, maybe 6-0 at that point?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
yeah, exactly. Like, that's what I'm just saying. Like, if you start 3-0, you might end up either 5-1 or 6-1,
and that's
5-1 or 6-0.
Yeah,
there we go.
And that's even acknowledging that after Miami locked it up, they looked as vulnerable as anybody when Akron took them down to the wire, of all things.
Mm-hmm.
And this feels like another season where it could be like that again. As weird as the preparation's been for a lot of these players, and stopping and starting potentially with COVID cases or with sicknesses, maybe, God forbid, like a flu bug runs through any of these teams, we're just in a position where it feels like last year, where anybody can beat anybody, and it's such an old cliche, but it's so accurate this year. I can see Miami going 6-0. I can see them faltering early, not finding an offensive rhythm, and not competing in the East.
Yeah, and it could just be one of those things, and this isn't just limited to Miami, but this is everywhere. If Miami just opens up the season playing flat, undisciplined football, if they just keep giving defenses 10 extra yards to play with because someone wanted to jump off sides or what have you, then yeah, Miami could see itself in a one-score battle that it shouldn't be in against Ball State. Or maybe it might be in another nail-biter, like you said, against Akron, this time on the road, that it shouldn't be in. How many of those situations can Miami avoid? That's going to be a big thing for me, I guess, because if you're going to play like champions, then actually play like champions. But that's not me trying to say, nut up or shut up with Miami, the team that just won it, because, they're a good team, and I respect them. And I'm also happy with where they're at as a program.
The formulas worked for them.
Leadership standpoint.
The formulas worked for them. Martin's. I think there was a lot of Martin trashing for years because of he's just an odd personality sometimes. And in addition to that, they didn't see the types of results they wanted to see. A couple of years back, they make that run where they start, 0-6, and they finish in 6-6 and make a bowl game. And they just didn't really ever make a big step forward. But if you can win 8 games in the MAC, you're fine. If you win 5 games every year, and this year, if you win 5 games, that's stellar. Most years, if you win 5 or 6 games in the MAC, that's fantastic. And Miami was in that position last year where, they're 5-win, 6-win team or whatever. They had it locked down with 2 weeks to go. And you have to be playing, and I think everybody recognizes this, but if you're Miami, you have to be playing like you're fighting for your MAC championship game lives from week 1.
Absolutely, yeah. And, I'll close it out with this. A lot of coaches kind of frantically start to look for the quarterback and then, kind of wire the team around the quarterback, and they get the quarterback going, and that's his team. That's how they win. Chuck Martin's formula, his quarterback, as long as he has his 11-person quarterback, like I said earlier, on defense, they'll be fine.
Yeah, we know who Miami is. There's no doubt about it.
Let's move on to the Bobcats.
Ohio.
Did you know that Ohio was either number 1 or number 2
in every preseason MAC poll of the last however many years, probably, is where you're going with this?
I was gonna say like yards per play on offense.
Okay.
But it works out the same though, right? Because why was Ohio picked to win so many times? And what happened to get them to trip over their own feet? You know, they were picked so many times because they had the dynamic offense with Nathan Rourke and, who was the running back? AJ Ouellette, Cam Odom. He's still on the team. He's still good.
Yep.
The defenses were good.
They've always had talented players. I mean,
and then you lose to Akron.
And that happens, yeah. I mean, you look at Ohio, how good Ohio was the year that Western was on top of the world, and that's the year they lose a close MAC championship game. And honestly, like, and while I've already said this year feels like the year where anything can happen, I don't know how much of that I feel like applies to Ohio, because they don't quite have the type of talent at a lot of those spots that they usually do. And there's a lot of uncertainty at quarterback between the younger. I mean, Curtis Rourke is not. It doesn't look like he's penciled in to be the starter, but it's not unusual for the idea of Frank Solich to play two quarterbacks. He did it a lot while I was a student in college. But Armani Rogers coming in as a transfer from UNLV, that you would think that changes the kind of their approach to offense. They're obviously run first and big time in that case. If Armani Rogers is starting quarterback from day one, you think they might be one of the most run-heavy teams in college football, because we've already seen his speed and what he's capable of doing.
Have you seen his size?
He's a big dude.
6'2", 225.
Yeah, I mean...
No, not 6'2". I think he's 6'5".
But he moves, man. Like, he moves so well.
Yeah. Like, he is a difference maker if he makes a difference for this offense, right?
Got to be healthy, first of all. He had those issues. He's yet to really put together, like... I think he had a really good freshman campaign, if my memory serves me right. And since then, like, he's had some injury issues. He transfers over here. And you don't really transfer across the country with the expectation of sitting a bench. So I can still see them playing two quarterbacks, but I would have to think they're trying to put the ball in Rodgers' hands to spin it to begin the year and, run a lot of the read option stuff. And, they've had a system that's worked for them to an extent a long time. As far as, running the football, read option style, and throwing it when they need to. They've got excellent wide receivers this year in Isaiah Cox and Cam Odom. Both of them pretty productive last year. Isaiah Cox even more so. And then O'Shawn Allison's back as a guy who was kind of unknown last year, but he should make a huge difference this year. He was good. They have good backups this year at running back. And then
I didn't know what to make of the running back situation. I liked all three of them. I liked Allison. I liked Tuggle. I liked Ross, and I like that. I think they're all coming back, I believe. At least two of them are. And I like that they're talented, and I like that they're tough, but it's just one of those things where I don't feel the identity. Maybe it's just, I'm not paying enough attention. Maybe that's the problem. But I'm not feeling the identity coming out of that running back group. Like, I don't know who the guy is I should be looking out for. And at that point, I'm like, is there a guy I should be looking out for?
I think you could say the same thing about, like, Miami, for example, in years past. Because yeah, and at least, like, I think back to when I was a student my sophomore year in school at OU. Ouellette was in his first year. He was penciled in as a fifth-string running back, and they tend to turn out good running backs regardless. So, seeing how much Allison grew last year in his first year as a starter, I would have to think that they're feeling pretty good about where they're at running back. Outside of that, I don't really know how they feel about offensive linemen, because they did lose some valuable guys there. Pleasance comes to mind. And then defense, like Jared Dorsa is a linebacker who has some name recognition. But outside of that, I'm struggling to even come up with guys that I know that made a big impact. I know Javon Hagan was that guy that had the name recognition for a lot of time. He brought Ohio some good attention in terms of just people knowing who he was and his social media presence and stuff he did on the field. But outside of that, like, it is another Solich team where I feel like he's probably going to get the most out of a lot of them, but they're probably not the best team in the East.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like, just because like we're not talking the most high about Ohio doesn't mean that they're not a great team, because like you just said, this is just wash, rinse, repeat. This is just a Solich team. You don't know who anybody is because that's not how Ohio's built. They're not built on getting 3 stars across the board. No. They're not supposed to recruit like
right,
Toledo.
and they don't recruit that way. They really don't.
No, they're supposed to get the walk-ons that didn't know that they were going to go to Ohio, that just graduated from Athens High School, and they turn into walk-ons, and then they start 3 years later, and they're like, holy shit, didn't know this was possible.
I mean, telling Joe Burrow stories another day. But, I mean, outside of that, I mean, we want to look at their schedule now real quick?
At Central, home against Akron. At Miami, home against Bowling Green. Home against Buffalo. At Kent State. Really tough schedule.
Yes.
Really tough schedule.
Definitely.
Like, especially, you get Akron, like, early on, yay, but at Central and at Miami to start the years for the most part, like, can they go 3-0? Can they go 3-0? Like, they have to be pissed that they lost to Miami the last couple of years. They have to be pissed that, they haven't made it to Detroit in any of these years. I'm just kidding. They made it to Detroit a few times, but never with the dub. They have to take on the 2 teams that were in Detroit just this past year.
Yeah.
Can they beat either of them?
Alex, I don't see them winning more than 3 games. And I would say that where this team is in the East, and then with Central as the crossover game, I would be almost inclined to say they're a 2-win team, but I don't expect that of a Solich team is the thing. So
First hot take of Mac Football Forever. All right.
I'm going with 3-3 because I don't expect Solich to coach a losing team.
You heard it here first. Caleb Carter said 2-4. Lock it in.
Sure.
Dang, man. I'm glad that I got you to hate on your school before we got to Eastern so I can...
I even said 3-3, okay? Like, come on.
I'm kidding. You said 3-3, but with potential for 2. But it makes sense. It makes sense because we're just kind of expecting this heartbreak to happen.
Sure.
Buffalo.
So, maybe the most talented team in the league, period?
The most threatening team, I think. But
they are frightening.
Here's the thing, though. Here's the thing about Buffalo. I like the roster more than I like the potential of the team. Does that make sense? Does what I say just makes... Did that make any sense?
We've had this conversation. You've had your reservations about certain position groups on the team. But at the spots where they're talented, they're probably more talented than almost any team in the league in several spots. So you look at their upside, and it's like they should beat anybody. And then you look at like where they're weak, and you're like, oh gosh, they might lose to Kent State.
Well, I mean, have you watched Buffalo football before?
I mean, I have, but I am obsessed and poisoned in the rain with Mac football. Remember, forever.
Absolutely, yeah. But my point is, have you seen the games that Buffalo lost when they shouldn't have?
I mean, also yes.
Like we just talked about one of them, right?
I mean,
we talked about the Kent State game.
Right.
You covered one of them. That was one of your first games as a beat reporter for NIU.
I mean, if I'm a Buffalo fan, I really don't want to relive that game. I mean, good Lord, the type of talent that team had, the position they were in against a team that really did not have offensive chops whatsoever. And for NIU to mount that comeback, I remember we're all sitting there, we're all at this game, Alex and I and our friend Justin Coffin, all of us have covered MAC football for years now. Fitz was there, yeah, some Fitz guy.
Don't hate on him. I love Fitz.
But holy crap! Thinking back to that night, I think Justin. If I'm like, I could have people that have written with me before, and if they hear this, they're gonna think it's gonna sound bad. But I think Justin wrote something better than anything else I read that night about the MAC championship game, and it was kind of his analysis of how NIU just finds a way to come through with it and what makes them inevitable. Thanos something or other, I'm inevitable, and that's how NIU felt. And if you're a Buffalo fan, as a football fan, it probably feels like, oh gosh, is there, even as talented as we are, will we find a way to break through? Basketball, sure, like powerhouse, like they got it figured out. The system is good. But football, like you're looking at all this talent and you're still probably biting your nails a bit, right?
Mm-hmm. And then another game that I gotta throw in there before we forget, the Ohio game. Should have won that. Went to overtime. What'd you do after you scored the matching touchdown in overtime? Doink the PAT. Missed that. Lost the game 21-20. Losing games that you shouldn't.
Yeah, what a weird consistency.
So if there's a team that I trust to lose games that they shouldn't, at this point, it's kind of Buffalo.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that'll come up on
If
this.
there's a team that I trust to kick everybody's ass, it's also Buffalo.
Yeah, I think that'll come up in a second when we have to agonize over their schedule. But I mean, so they face Miami early. First of all, we'll get back to that. But Miami might have the best defense in the league, but Buffalo's probably the most talented at a number of spots on defense. I mean, you look at Taylor Riggins, Malcolm Kuntz, Chibuze Onwuka, all those guys.
James Patterson.
Well, I'm just talking about defense for starters, man.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. James, that's the twin brother.
Oh, no, Jarrett James. And looking at talented guys, I mean, even after losing Ladarius Mack and Joey Banks, they're still so good on the defensive side of the football. And Kadofi Wright's back at linebacker. Tyrone Hill's back at safety.
Taylor Riggins.
I said Taylor Riggins. Malcolm Kuntz. I mean, they just create sacks. They create pressures. They make it a focus of their offense. They put offenses in bad positions, and they bring the heat. They also bring the heat on early downs sometimes, and just put everybody in a terrible position. Like, you do not want to play a Buffalo defense 9 days out of 10, but some weeks, they just, they kind of let down.
Yeah, you don't want to be on 2nd and 14, but sometimes you just have to play Buffalo.
Oh, gosh. I'm going to go look through stats, and it's to be like, Buffalo is actually the best in the conference at not giving up first downs on this, but it doesn't work. They still lose games they shouldn't.
And that's really the point. I don't like... so how much has changed for Buffalo over the last couple of years? Let's make the conversation that, and then we'll move on. How much has changed since that 2018 run? Obviously, let's think of a lot of the players that were on that team that made a huge difference. Tyree Jackson. Has the quarterback position been great since then?
No.
Are you very confident in Kyle Van Treese or Matt Myers if he plays at all? I don't know if he's going to play this year.
No.
Are you confident that Kyle Van Treese can make some plays for Buffalo? Maybe.
I would at least think they're a lot more confident about what they have at the quarterback position going into the season, because it was terrible at the beginning of last year. Like, what they got production wise out of the quarterback position, it was so bad. Like,
they went with the wrong guy. They just went with the wrong guy, and I understood the logic. I just think they went with the wrong guy in the end.
And it just looks. I mean, I watched film from the beginning of last year what their offense looked like. You've got two of the best running backs in the conference, period, and they just look so bad offensively because of what they've got at quarterback. And now you're thinking, like, okay, they should be improved. Like, they don't have any excuses.
Yep. And if anybody listening to this also listened to my podcast, Tuesday Night Lights, defunct now, but if anybody listened to me at the time, after Buffalo lost to Miami, I think the score was 34-20. After they lost, I kind of looked around. I was like, Kyle Van Treese made a few plays. That was the game that Matt Myers got knocked out for that game and for the season, essentially. Had Buffalo just gone with a different quarterback weeks before to open up the season and had Kyle Van Treese, the guy that's already older, more experienced, maybe they would have beat Miami. Who knows? Maybe they would have won one more game. Who knows?
Probably. Or
who knows?
It's more likely. And, I mean, so between those spots and, I mean, they've got guys back like Antonio Nunn and Daniel Lee at wide receiver. And, I mean, Rachel Lindsay from the Buffalo News said that it's a competition again between Myers and Van Treese and that it's not settled yet.
It's got to be, man.
So who knows? Coaches always say it's a competition. And then they lost some really good offensive linemen. And that's kind of like where there's some uncertainty too. I think you had mentioned some uncertainties about the wide receiver group where it's not, don't think it's particularly strong, which is weird to think about considering how strong it was in like 2018. But if they're not putting up, if they're not an aerial threat this year, say they haven't made the progress you would have wanted them to make as a fan, do Marks and Patterson even as productive this year?
I mean, no matter what, this year is going to be led by Patterson and Kevin Marks, right? Like, especially if like these MAC teams, if we've seen what college football looks like right now, think maybe things are going to be different in November with these guys having more practices by then, but tackling has not been college football's thing right now. If you're looking for some tackling, you're not watching it in the college game, and if the MAC guys are also having a tough time with tackling by the time November and December rolls around, there's no way anybody else other than Patterson and Marks are getting the ball in this
I was
team.
going to say, then Buffalo's in good shape.
Yeah, then they are just running around the Christmas tree. Running around. Let's look at Buffalo's schedule. At NIU, home against Miami. At Bowling Green, home against Kent. At Ohio, home against Akron.
I mean, they've got 2 good games that you would love to have at home that they do.
Yeah. It's just tough because I just see Buffalo getting in its own way, but I'm trying to see, like, okay, Buffalo NIU could be interesting because I'm not totally sure what to get out of NIU.
Oh, they're going to be. I mean, NIU is going to be in a similar position. We'll get to it later, and we're going to talk about another team here in a second, in Akron, that's very young, just like NIU. Don't know that NIU is going to have much in the way of experience early on in the year. So, I mean, even in DeKalb, it's probably Buffalo's still probably feeling pretty good going into DeKalb to start the year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say so too. So let's give them 1-0 start. Will they beat Miami this time?
I mean, I'm tuning in. I don't know if I have a strong opinion, but it's between those two.
And the most important one, Kent State. I think that's probably more important than the Miami game.
And that's the game that you said, and I agreed that Kent State's in a position where they could elevate, they could move past Buffalo, and it wouldn't shock me at all. But they've got some games in places like between having Miami and the Kent State games at home. Like those are 2 really good games to have at home. I'm probably thinking 5-1 is what I'm leaning toward.
Mm-hmm. It feels 5-1.
4-2 is more likely, but 5-1 is where my head is at, because I think that only either somebody sneaks up on them late in the season and gets the 1, or Kent State gets the 1. Mm-hmm. I could just as easily see Buffalo losing one of those early games and then getting tripped up by Kent State or Ohio, but I mean, especially because the Ohio game's on the road in December. But I mean, it doesn't really matter at this point when it's cold and miserable, and all of these teams are in an ideal world still fighting for something, and we're entertained as all hell. I mean, I think 5-1.
I mean, it depends. I mean, we have to find out what the answer for this question is going to be. Can somebody win their division with a 4-2 record this year? I almost think it's a little bit impossible, but I think we have no choice but to let, like, someone has to go 4-2. It's almost shaped up to be that way. As much as we like,
our math is going to be skewed regardless.
Schedules, but they could both lose one they shouldn't, and then there we go, 4-2.
Our math is going to be screwed no matter what, because we want to err on the side of positivity, and it's going to be like, okay, but those games don't equal out to a 500 record. You gave somebody too many wins.
Yeah, let's be honest with ourselves. That's why we started this podcast.
Sure.
Or not this podcast, but Jesus Christ, man, I'm so used to this setup being a podcast thing. Let's move on to Akron.
Sure. You've got a young team, a young coach, still trying to figure it all out. And if you're Akron, what are you excited about this year exactly?
Online classes.
That's exciting.
Let's see. Yeah, do they have to change that because they had the turnover pencil, right? What are they going to do now? Are they going to do are they going to hold up a green screen for their Zoom backgrounds? What's
they're going to hold up a hanky.
Hold up a hanky
or a tissue.
A tissue? Why?
To stay the hell away from me. It's COVID season, distance.
My God. All right.
I mean. All
right. Let's get serious about Akron football.
People have been social distancing from Akron games for years, Alex.
I haven't been socially distancing myself from the stadium because I don't like them. I just live too far. I would love to go to Infocision.
It's nice.
I've heard very good things about it.
Food spread.
Why it has to be in Akron is beyond me.
Food spread was great. Let me tell you, beat writer knowledge here for you. The food spread at Infocision Stadium ruled.
What was it?
It was chicken for one. I can't remember who catered it, but they had a really good like buffet of stuff, and that's a subject I will definitely go over in another podcast of like who had the best spreads of like
Again, not a podcast, but here we are. Do we just keep calling it that?
Listen, it's like we know it's what it feels like in its heart, man, but it's like so many things, you know.
Okay, the podcasting thing is up for discussion later. Let's sneak that in there. Anyways.
But, you know, Akron, it's weird because they're in a position where they're going to be so young. And you would think, okay, they're not going to be worse than last year. That offense was historically bad. They were almost like negative 1.3 on turnover ratio against them. And they lost several of their All-MAC players. They lost John Lako, backer, who was like a MAC player of the week type guy almost any week because he'd always have 15 or 16 tackles. Alvin Davis is gone. And he was an all-MAC caliber player for several years. They don't have much. I mean, Cato Nelson's back. That's a thing.
Yeah. Do you know who led the team in rushing attempts last year? Cato Nelson. Do you want to know by how many? Over 40.
I mean, they went with a different running back every week, I'm sure.
Like 40 more attempts than the next guy.
I think they were outrushed by like 2,000-something yards last year.
Yeah, it sounds about right. I want to say...
That's not me exaggerating. I honestly think it was like 2,300 to like 400 or something like that.
Oh, I'll pull it up for the people to see. Don't worry.
It's nuts. That was a historically bad offense. And when NIU's season was essentially lost, when they were barely playing for something at the end of the season, like they were still... It's not like they just dropped off and gave no craps, but they came into DeKalb and NIU whopped them 49-0, and it's just like, Akron, what are you doing? I know it's a road game late in the season, but playing listless football in a winless season, and you just hope for their case that they've made some steps. And with a coaching staff that, you know, Tom Arth was kind of a fast rising name, they have the chance to like make their mark as a program, not by winning 3 or 4 games this year, but just showing that maybe they've got some characteristic about them that is going to be something to worry about in the years going forward. But for now, I have no idea what that is.
I think what they need to do, I don't think that... So, yes, like I said before, they will tell you, and their real expectation is to win more football games. However, the first step into doing that, because you're Akron, you need to focus on playing closer football games. You need to do what Eastern did. Just start pissing people off.
And what did
That's how you win.
What did you do against Miami last year? I'm sure they're watching that. I'm sure that coaching staff is watching that game like once a week during the off season. What were the reps that kept us in the game against Miami? What were the individual efforts that kept us in a game against Miami?
Yeah, take these games that are like 16-point spreads and make them decided by 2 points. Make these games that are decided by 21 points and have them decided by only 3 points. You know, you got to have a good defensive game plan at Akron, because you're not going to have like the best offense in Akron. Like, you have to have grinders there. You have to have those grinders. You have to have a team that's built the same way that Ohio does it, where they go out of their way to find, you know, the local third stringers and make them into walk-on first stringers, I guess. Develop the hell out of the local guys and go from there. But you're not going to have championship level experiences year in and year out. But you need to have, you know, that grit. You need to have that gritty football team. You need to have the Akron team that, like, man, Buffalo should go 5-1, but fuck, man, Akron, dude, like they for whatever reason, they find some linebackers and they might keep Jarrett Patterson in trouble. They need to have those kinds of experiences to build a good Akron football program, I believe, because they're not going to build a very successful one because it's in Akron. There's no such thing as a very successful football program there. But you can have a team there that's going to piss some teams off along the way.
And, you know, squeeze your way into a MAC championship game, which there is 100%.
Yeah, find your stumble your way into places you shouldn't like that. Do that.
100%.
That's what it should be. Absolutely.
100% no shame in being the team that was just kind of like middling, found a way to win some close games, you know, had a win against a good team on their backs, and, you know, finds a way to get on in there.
Yeah, do that, but better, because like you still gave up over 100 yards and penalties in that Ohio game in 2017. Like have that kind of season, but better. Absolutely.
So I mean, they've they've beaten a Big Ten team in recent years. They've beaten Northwestern. Like, was it supposedly like the most ugly like 39-34 game ever? Like, yeah. Everybody who watched it seems to think so.
Yeah,
but
it was dumb, but guess what? It counted.
Like, how do you rediscover that if you're Akron? Like, it's still not this year, but as you've said, I agree with what you said. Like, you scratch and claw and you find your way to play close games so that you feel like you're playing for something every week.
Yeah, and I think we're gonna have to break it down at some point, but I think, and I'm gonna have to, do the research for reals on this, but I think Tom Arth has gone out of his way to find some JUCO guys to come into the programs, early on. He's going to have to try to find more later. But the JUCO guys, I think it's a good way to like jumpstart, a bad program and get guys who are just willing to play football literally anywhere as long as it's at the FBS level. You can do that, by getting some JUCO guys to fix up the look of Akron for a little bit. You can do that.
Sure.
Do more of that.
Yeah. I mean, schedule though. Who can they beat?
I'm not looking at it. 0-6. I'm just kidding. They open up the season with Western. That's the only thing I'm going to tell you.
Sure. BG could be an interesting one, obviously, because of, reasons.
But I don't. Even then, I just don't because, they both kind of had to replace their coaches at the same time. The last tenure didn't end so well. They're not returning the best offenses, and the defenses aren't much better. At least Bowling Green recruits at a much better level than Akron does.
Yeah, I mean...
So for that reason alone, I can't give Akron too much.
I would love to say something
consideration.
positive about what Akron is capable this year, what they're capable of this year. I think what it's going to come down to is it's up to Akron to surprise everybody, and if that's got to be their mindset every week, right? Like, they've got to have something that we aren't familiar with or something we don't know about because we don't see anything in the cupboard that gives us a reason to be super optimistic about what they're capable of this year. I mean, maybe one of these backs from last year who didn't see that much time is going to get penciled in, see more consistent time. Maybe a wide receiver comes out of nowhere we're not familiar with. I'm not familiar with the JUCOs that came to Akron. Maybe there's something there. I don't know.
Caleb, let's wrap things up. Let's do a quick prediction. How do you see the season falling for the East? How do you see things shaping up? Obviously, it looks like our three favorite teams our two favorites are Miami and Buffalo.
Right.
Our third favorite team, probably Kent.
I think so.
Our fourth team, not because they're the fourth best, but because they keep showing us bad displays of non-championship football, is Ohio.
I resent that verbiage, but sure.
And 5 and 6, pretty much Bowling Green, Akron, whoever wins.
Right.
So who wins the East, though? I'm
going
going Miami. I'm just going to say Miami.
It almost feels going out on a limb, but it's not. Buffalo. Buffalo's going to find a way to win that game against Miami because the guys you love, their running backs, they're going to break it. They're going to break Miami's defense. And I'm just confident that they can do it this time. So it's going to be on them to not slip up late in the season after beating Miami early.
Fair enough.
So don't lose to Kent State.
Don't.
And if you do, don't lose to anybody else.
Just don't lose.
Don't lose.
Just don't lose football games, guys. It's that easy.
That's what happened with NIU throughout, for 7 years. They just didn't lose to anybody in the conference. I feel fairly confident about Buffalo as my pick. So
I feel confident for you. I'm still picking Miami. I think Buffalo, they need to shore some things up on offense outside of the running back group. I like that, that the offensive line still continues to perform well even after 2018. Because I think in that season, Tyree Jackson didn't get sacked until week 6.
The line was freaking amazing in 2018.
That was a very outstanding O-line.
Daryl Ogpalsa, who's now the NIU offensive line coach, was the coach for Buffalo in 2018. And he'd been there for, I think, all of Lance Leipold's tenure. They have really good stuff working there when he was the offensive line coach. And even after losing some guys, I feel like Buffalo's had the type of consistency teaching its offensive line within its system that they'll be fine there.
Yeah, and if Kyle Van Treese can just take the next level, just take that next step and make him, if he can just be a quarterback that makes us want to talk about him, and make plays, make the most out of his receivers. If he can make his receivers better, that'd be cool. I don't know if he has that kind of ability.
I think if we don't talk about Kyle Van Treese at all for most of the rest of the season, that's also a good thing, because it means that the running backs are carrying the load and they're not turning the football over.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. But they just need some playmakers on the outside, man. Like they didn't have too much going for me. I just wasn't in love with it.
It's Nunn. They've got Antonio Nunn. They've got to get going. That's at least where I think after reading what the Buffalo News beat writer Rachel Lindsay had to say.
Well, it's like they always say about receivers at Buffalo. If you have one, you have none.
Can I cancel? Can I cancel you?
First episode, you want me canceled?
I want you canceled, yes.
Hell yeah.
Welcome to cancel culture, folks. This is Alex getting canceled.
All right, Caleb. Well, I think we've more than covered it, and even then, I still kind of feel like we came up short. Like, it's crazy. Like, we've gone so long without talking about MAC football, and now that we finally talk too much about it, there's still so much that went unsaid.
I mean, we only touched on the East today, and like we haven't even talked about all the things we want to do with MAC football forever and how we want to, bring people together on this. So that's something that we're going to keep having conversations about, but you're going to want to be plugged in to our YouTube and to Twitter and social media, following our accounts, looking to see what dumb takes we have about MAC football being forever in our heads. And I mean, Alex, what do you want from people? What do you want them to do? What do you want from them?
Honestly, I just want you to follow. I really just want the follows right now. We just need to follow. We need the follows on the YouTube. Or the subscribes on the YouTube, the follows on the Twitter. We're still kind of ironing out details, but overall, what we want to do from this point forward is, 1, have this on YouTube every week. An improved version of this, of course, but this every week. And maybe not so long as this, because this went very long with our, inaugural episode, and then trying to hammer out some details about what you need to know about the East really quickly, because the season's coming up in less than 3 weeks. Oh my God!
You love it, y'all. If y'all are still here, you obviously love this type of crap. So I mean, we love you. If that's the case, we love you.
Like I'm saying, we're not gonna have these episodes run however long this is gonna be every week. Don't want that to be a thing. Don't want that to be a habit. But it just had to be done for this time. Again, just follow us on the socials, and we will go from there. We want you to tell me. I want you to tell me what you want out of the community. Do you like message boards? Do you like... Oh, I'm sorry. Do you like Discord? Do you like whatever? Because what we want to do, we want to get the MAC fans as a whole. We want everybody together. We want people that, can't get over the fact that they still get pissed at clock management in this stupid Kent State game that they saw on ESPN Plus. We want you people in our whatever we're gonna have.
Yeah, I mean, we want that. We want people who still bring up the Buster Bronco cocaine image. Like, that's. I mean, if that stuff sticks in your mind forever, that's the people we want talking about MAC football forever.
Was that ever your profile picture? Come hang with us.
Absolutely, and I mean, like we want to interviews. Like, do we want to interview players? Do we interview coaches? Do we want to talk about former players? Do we want to talk about the best players or best team from whatever decade? Like, seriously, if there's something you would love to hear us talk about in the MAC, because we're giving you some type of conversation that you don't hear anywhere else, like, we'd love to give it to you.
Caleb, it's time for you and I to sign off. Everybody on MAC Football Forever, thank you for listening. We will hang out with you guys whenever we hang out with you guys next.